Your wrists are bound tightly behind your back with a thick nylon cord. Your ankles are tied together with a heavy double knot. You are sinking like a stone toward the tiled floor of a 9-foot-deep combat training pool. The water pressure compresses your chest cavity. Carbon dioxide is rapidly building up in your bloodstream, triggering violent involuntary spasms in your diaphragm. Your primitive brain, the amygdala, is screaming a single terrifying command: panic. It wants you to thrash. It wants you to fight the water. It wants you to open your mouth and inhale. But if you thrash, you exhaust your remaining oxygen in 10 seconds. If you open your mouth, you drown. You have to let gravity drag you to the concrete floor, bend your bound knees, and launch your rigid body toward the surface to capture one single desperate gasp of air before you sink back into the abyss. The task is to do this continuously without breaking rhythm for the next 5 minutes. I served nearly 20 years in the special operations community. I am not going to name names or list specific operations. A lot of that is in the past and some of it stays there. I came back with this body, some titanium hardware in my spine, and a military disability rating. Now this channel is my job. I share the reality of what it takes to survive in the worst conditions on Earth. It is a straightforward exchange. We have a suffocating, biologically terrifying movement ahead of us today. Today, we are analyzing the ultimate equalizer on the modern battlefield: deep water. We are traveling to the aquatic training facilities of the United States Navy SEALs and the Army combat divers to deconstruct the psychological terror of the combat pool. We are going into the drown-proofing test. To understand why the military binds the hands and feet of its operators and throws them into the deep end, you first have to understand the biological reality of drowning. When a human being is submerged underwater and holding their breath, a complex physiological countdown begins. The civilian public generally believes the urge to breathe is caused by a lack of oxygen. That is biologically incorrect. The agonizing, burning sensation in your lungs is triggered by hypercapnia. This is the toxic buildup of carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. Your brain has specialized chemoreceptors that monitor the acidity of your blood. When you hold your breath, your cells continue to produce carbon dioxide. Because you are not exhaling, that carbon dioxide cannot escape. It builds up and turns your blood slightly acidic. When those chemoreceptors detect the acid, they send emergency signals to the brainstem. The brainstem forcefully commands the diaphragm to contract. It is trying to physically force your lungs to inhale. These are diaphragmatic spasms. For an untrained civilian, the first spasm induces absolute panic. The amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex. The civilian thrashes wildly, burns through their remaining oxygen, inhales water, and dies. A combat diver operating at 40 feet in the pitch black cannot afford an amygdala hijack. If your air supply is cut off, any thrashing will immediately kill you. The military needed a mechanism to ruthlessly filter out any candidate who could not suppress their own central nervous system. They designed the drown-proofing evolution. It begins on the tiled deck of the pool. The instructors order the candidates to pair up. You take a thick piece of nylon cord and tightly bind your teammates' ankles together. Then you bind their hands behind their back. Enter the water. You step off the edge, you immediately sink. Because your limbs are completely immobilized, your natural buoyancy dynamics are catastrophically altered. You cannot tread water. You are functionally paralyzed. The first phase is called bobbing. As you sink to the bottom, your only option is to let yourself fall. When your bare feet impact the concrete floor, you forcefully bend your knees and execute a violent upward jump. Since your hands are bound, you cannot use them to generate thrust. You rely entirely on the kinetic energy of your legs to break the surface. As you ascend, you have to continuously, slowly exhale the toxic carbon dioxide from your lungs. If you fail to exhale on the way up, you will not have the lung capacity to take a fresh breath when you breach. Your head breaks the surface. You have exactly a fraction of a second. You violently inhale a massive volume of air. Then gravity instantly reasserts control. You sink back down. You perform this rhythmic mechanical bobbing for 5 continuous minutes. Every time you push off the bottom, you burn massive amounts of energy. By the third minute, the carbon dioxide buildup is significant. The diaphragm spasms begin. Your brain begs you to untie your hands. The instructors watch from the edge, looking down through the clear water. They are looking for the wide, terrified eyes of a man losing his mind. If you break your rhythm and swallow a mouthful of chlorinated water, you will begin to choke. Choking while bound underwater guarantees a blackout. After 5 minutes, the instructors blow a whistle. The test immediately transitions to the floating phase. You bend at the waist and fill your lungs with a massive volume of air. You let your body float on the surface like a dead jellyfish. Your face is entirely submerged. You hold your breath. Because human muscle and bone are denser than water, your legs will constantly try to drag you down. Finding the absolute perfect center of gravity is critical. Your lungs act as biological buoys. When your lungs burn and the spasms hit, you quickly lift your head, take a rapid breath, and submerge your face again. This lasts for 2 continuous minutes. The next phase is the dolphin travel. Still completely bound, your objective is to travel a distance of 50 yards across the pool. You achieve this by utilizing the dolphin kick. You arch your back, violently snap your core downward, and undulate your body. You travel underwater, periodically breaking the surface to snatch a breath before diving back down. The physical exhaustion in the lower back is agonizing. Finally, the evolution culminates with the mask retrieval. An instructor throws a heavy rubber diving mask onto the bottom of the deep end. You execute a surface dive and swim straight down to the concrete floor. Your hands are still tied behind your back. You grab the mask with your teeth. You bite down on the thick rubber skirt, secure it in your jaw, and execute a massive dolphin kick to propel yourself back to the surface. Drown-proofing is an absolute, uncompromising filter. It proves to the cadre that you will not fight the environment. It proves you possess the cognitive discipline to suppress the amygdala, acknowledge the lack of oxygen, and execute a mechanical procedure to survive. Once a candidate proves they will not panic when bound, the military introduces the true nightmare of combat diving. This is the pool harassment phase. The candidate is fully geared up. You wear a thick neoprene wetsuit, a heavyweight belt, a dive mask, and twin aluminum scuba tanks strapped to your back. You are breathing compressed air and treading water in the deep end. The instructors enter the water. Their authorized mission is to simulate a catastrophic equipment failure. The instructor dives below the candidate. They approach from the blind spot. Suddenly, the instructor violently attacks. They grab your harness and pull you deep underwater. They violently rip the diving mask off your face. They reach into your mouth, rip the life-saving regulator out from between your teeth, and throw it over your shoulder. They violently spin you upside down in the water column to induce vertigo. You are now 20 feet underwater. The water is flooding your unprotected nose and eyes. You have absolutely no air source. The biological shock is paralyzing. The mammalian diving reflex hits hard. The cold water striking your face triggers the gasp reflex. If you try to swim toward the surface, or if you physically fight the instructor, you fail instantly. The military requires an operator to respond to chaos with cold, calculated procedures. When the attack happens, you go completely limp. You allow the instructor to spin you. You tuck your chin to protect your airway. When the instructor finally releases you, your task is to execute a strict mechanical checklist. First, you secure your air supply. You lean to the right, sweep your arm in a massive arc back toward the tanks, and physically catch the rubber hose. You trace the hose to the regulator and place it back into your mouth. But you cannot just inhale. The regulator is completely flooded. If you inhale, you drown. You use the tiny reserve of air remaining in your burning lungs to forcefully exhale into the mouthpiece. This blows the water out through the exhaust valve. Only then can you take a breath. Once breathing is established, you open your eyes in the chlorinated water, locate your mask, place it on your face, and clear the water by blowing air through your nose while looking up. Throughout this entire agonizing process, you remain at depth. You cannot bob to the surface. The instructors will attack repeatedly. They will turn off the main air valve on your tanks, forcing you to calmly reach behind your head and manually turn the valve back on while holding your breath. The pool harassment drills forge the neural pathways that allow an operator to solve complex, life-threatening mechanical problems while their body is biologically suffocating. The architecture of the drown-proofing test applies ruthlessly to the suffocating crises of your own civilian life. You will likely never have your hands tied behind your back in a 9-foot pool, but life is absolutely going to tie your hands. You are going to face periods where you are plunged into the deep end of a crisis, entirely stripped of your ability to fight back. A massive financial debt, a devastating legal battle, a chronic health diagnosis. When that happens, you sink. The gravity of the situation drags you straight to the bottom. As you sink, the emotional carbon dioxide builds up. The stress becomes toxic. Your amygdala is going to scream at you to panic. It will tell you to thrash. It will tell you to lash out at the people around you, make impulsive decisions, and violently fight the reality of your situation. If your hands are tied and you thrash in the deep water, you drown. Panic exhausts your emotional reserves in 10 seconds flat. When life throws you in the water, you execute the drown-proofing protocol. First, stop fighting the water. Acknowledge that you are bound. Acknowledge that the situation is terrible and that you are sinking. Let gravity take you to the bottom. You cannot bounce back until you find a solid foundation. Let your feet touch the concrete reality of your crisis. Look at the exact dollar amount of the debt. Look at the reality of the medical diagnosis. Hit the bottom. Second, once you feel the concrete under your feet, bend your knees and push. Use the kinetic energy of your own resilience to launch yourself toward the surface. Take one specific positive action, make one phone call, pay one small bill. Third, as you rise toward the surface, exhale the toxic air. Let go of the anger and the resentment. If you hold onto the toxic waste in your mind, you will not have the capacity to take a fresh breath when you reach the top. When you break the surface, take one breath. Handle the problem directly in front of you. Then you accept the fact that you have to sink back down and do it again. You bob, you survive. You establish a mechanical, emotionless rhythm. You prove that no matter how tightly your hands are tied, you possess the cognitive discipline to override the panic, find the bottom, and push back up to the light. Prepare for the harassment. Just when you think you have your breathing under control, life will dive bomb you from the blind spot. It will rip the mask off your face and steal your air supply. A sudden secondary crisis will hit you when you are already drowning. When life rips the regulator out of your mouth, do not thrash. Go limp. Let the chaos spin you. When it releases you, execute your mechanical checklist. Sweep your arm, find your anchor, clear the water from your vision, re-establish your breathing. Do not let the panic dictate your actions. I have bobbed in those pools. I have felt the terrifying burn of carbon dioxide in my lungs, forcing my mind to suppress the instinct to thrash. I know the dark, heavy pressure of the deep end. I know the quiet confidence that comes from surviving when your air is gone. Find the bottom, push up, breathes. If this video gave you something useful, dropping a like and subscribing is the best way you can respond. It is literally what keeps this channel alive. I will see you at the rally point. Out.